take a way too early look of who Ohio State might just play in the college football playoffs. Ohio State is most certainly going to be making the college football playoffs this season. If they don't, we will be having an entirely different conversation. But as long as everything goes to plan, which I surely hope it does, but as long as everything goes to plan, we should be conversing mostly about who is Ohio State going to be facing in the college football playoffs. Now, the thing about this 12-team playoff that I actually like is the guesswork that's going to be going into it beforehand. You're going to be having what's the committee do with this team, and you have this team rising up because they won the Big 12 or the ACC, and then this there, that there, and it's just going to cause chaos, and it's going to be a lot for people to talk about, and it's also going to be a lot for the committee to try and find out. So what I would like to do is I would like to go and look at the early odds in the ESPN FPI and take a look and see who's favored to win their conferences, who are people predicting will win their conferences. So I've looked at a myriad of different angles to figure out who is most likely going to be in certain seedings that Ohio State might be in, and then figure out who would those teams be. So I have 4 different scenarios. Like I said, this is not me predicting what the college football playoffs is going to look like. This is me looking at the odds and saying, okay, this is the most likely second place team in the SEC. This is the most likely fourth place team in the Big Ten. This is the team with the best odds to win the Big 12, things like that. All right. So we're not going to go through and do the entire college football playoff for each scenario, but we are going to look at who Ohio State would face first. And then if Ohio State has a for sure opponent after that, we would look at who would they face after that. All right, so let's just be optimistic to start, right? Ohio State is the number 1 seed in the college football playoffs. Here are a list of teams that it looks like, based off predictions from other experts, based on the odds and what we're kind of looking at there. Here are 6 different teams that would be likely to be the number 8 seed if Ohio State is ranked number 1. Now, of course, if Ohio State is ranked number 1, they would be facing either the 8 seed or the 9 seed. The most likely 8 seeds coming up are Michigan, Penn State, Ole Miss, Alabama, Missouri, and Notre Dame. Now, where do you get this from? You're going to be looking at most likely whoever finishes third in the Big Ten, and right now the odds favor Michigan and Penn State heavily for that. I tend to disagree on the Michigan take. However, like I said, I'm not putting my own prediction into this. I'm just looking at the odds and the FPI, things like that. And then the 4th place SEC team is favored to be in this spot based on a lot of projections, a lot of predictions by the experts out there. And so the teams that you kind of have in that 3 to 5 spot range of finishing in the SEC, most likely going to be your 4th place team, Ole Miss, Alabama, Missouri, and then you're going to find a consistency here with Notre Dame, just the complete wild card, because Notre Dame can't have spot 1, 2, 3, or 4. Notre Dame can only be in spot 5 through 11. And so if Notre Dame is going to make the playoffs, they're most likely going to be in one of those 5 through 11 spots. I tend to believe with their schedule this year, they probably won't get up to 5 or 6, but you never know if they go undefeated. It could possibly happen if just the committee shows them that respect, I guess you could say. But if we're looking at the 8 seeds here, this is who we would most likely see playing in the first round against, and these are the 9 seeds, who are generally about the same. However, you add in a possible second place ACC team. My ACC and Big 12 backward there. My bad. Just go ahead and in your mind, imaginary flip those. Most likely Kansas State, Utah, Oklahoma State. Those are your second place teams in the Big 12 that could possibly see themselves still getting into the playoffs. And then your Clemson, Florida State, Miami, your second place teams in the ACC who could possibly get themselves into the playoffs. Now, I admit Miami is a bit of a reach, but their schedule is pretty lackluster this year. If they go through the entire regular season, go undefeated, kind of like Louisville did last year, but they actually make it all the way through undefeated and then lose in the ACC championship game, that's an area where I look at it and say it could possibly happen. Maybe it's not likely, but it could possibly, theoretically, it could happen and be there. So, not that I'm predicting Miami to go undefeated or anything like that. But most likely, you're going to be seeing a first round game between the 8 and 9 seed if Ohio State is the number 1 ranked team. Now, let's see if Ohio State is the number 2 team, right? Maybe they go undefeated. So does Georgia, but Georgia has a tougher schedule. So Georgia's number 1 and Ohio State is number 2. That would make complete sense. I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. Let's look at the 7 seeds because if Ohio State is ranked number 2, they would be playing either the 7 seed or the 10 seed. The likely 7 seeds that we've been looking at are most likely going to be either your second place, in a very unlikely scenario, your second place SEC, or much more likely your third place SEC team. Some of those who are favored to do that are Texas, Ole Miss. I don't think anybody has the thought that Georgia is going to go all the way down there, so I didn't include them in that. But certainly Texas, Ole Miss. You could see a team like Alabama or somebody like that possibly getting up there as well, but these seem to be 2 of the teams that are most likely favored to do that. And then the second place Big Ten team. And the odds are favoring Oregon and Michigan for that. Penn State as well. Honestly, I probably should have put Penn State on this graphic, but at the end of the day, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, those seem to be who the odds in the FPI are favoring there. Like I said, if Ohio State is ranked second, not saying that the odds only favor that happening, but if Ohio State wins the Big Ten, these are some of the teams that would be favored to do that. And then obviously, like I said, kind of the wild card in there, Notre Dame. If they do go undefeated, you could possibly see them being seeded as highly as 7th. I think that's probably as high as they could possibly go. They might be able to get in that 5th or that 6th range, but just no conference championship game. Very weak schedule this year. I mean, somebody would really have to have a good season and pop up on their schedule for them to get much higher than 7th. Even with an undefeated schedule, we know the committee is most likely going to favor an SEC and a Big Ten team, probably over the likes of Notre Dame. All right, the 10 seeds. You're looking at most likely your 4th place SEC team or a 1-loss Notre Dame. So again, Ole Miss, Alabama, Missouri, we talked about them. And then you're looking at Notre Dame. And so you're looking at a winner between someone on the last list and someone on this current list. The teams that seem to be popping up a lot right now, if Ohio State is ranked number 1 or number 2, seem to be Notre Dame, Ole Miss, Missouri, Michigan, Penn State, those kind of teams. Feels like 7 through 10 could be a lot of different teams there. And so those seem to be a lot of the teams that we're looking at that Ohio State would most likely play. But let's get crazy. All right. Scenario number 3. Let's get crazy. What if Ohio State is the 5th seed? Ohio State, maybe they lose the conference championship game to Oregon or something like that. Oregon and Ohio State had a battle in Oztec Stadium, and then they go and they lose in the Big Ten championship game to Oregon, something like that, and then Ohio State is the 5th seeded team. If that does happen, your 12 seeds, your group of 5 invite team most likely is looking at Liberty, Boise State, Fresno State, and App State. App State has a very good chance of winning the Sun Belt. Liberty has a very good chance of repeating. However, the thought process there is their schedule is so bad, and their schedule was so bad last year, and they did get embarrassed so bad against Oregon that is it possible the committee could take a 1-loss Boise State or Fresno State, or maybe a 1-loss App State, and say, you know what, let's give this other group of 5 team a shot. They actually played some people. They actually play in a tougher conference. Who knows? It could happen. I don't think it's that big of a thing to worry about, but at the end of the day, who knows? It could possibly happen. The 4 seed. All right, so if Ohio State is 5th, right? Say Ohio State wins that first game against the 12 seed. Boy, I hope so. I hope you would beat Liberty or App State or Boise State or Fresno State, all right? Don't even get me started on what would happen if Ohio State lost to App State in the conference and the college football playoffs. That would be wild. But the 4 seed, you're looking at most likely the Big 12 champ here. If you have an ACC champ that maybe kind of got their way there to the championship game, kind of snuck their way there with maybe 1 or 2 losses. Some of the odds favoring that are Miami and Louisville to possibly do that. So you could see a Big 12 team, if they have a really, really good season, jump to the 3 spot, and maybe a not as good ACC team jump back to the 4 spot. But most likely the 4 spot is going to belong to whoever wins the Big 12, i.e., Kansas State, Utah, Kansas. Could you imagine Kansas having the 4th spot in the college football playoffs? That would be wild. And then Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy, very, very underrated coach. Oklahoma State has been ranked up there a number of times, and I do think that they could possibly win the Big 12 this year as well. All right, now, one more scenario. If Ohio State is the number 6 seed, all right, I feel like this is probably the most likely. If Ohio State drops a game, or if they lose the Big Ten championship game, say they go undefeated in the regular season, but they lose the Big Ten championship game against whoever it might be, most likely Oregon. I think this is probably the most likely scenario. Playing an 11 seed. This is where the 11 seed looks a little bit different. You still have Missouri in there. They still have good odds to possibly be that seed there. The 11 seed is most likely going to be either your 4th place Big Ten team or your 5th place SEC team. Your SEC teams that you're looking at there: Tennessee, Missouri, Oklahoma, LSU. LSU could earn a little bit more respect even if they don't do so well in the what's the word? SEC. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. If they don't do so well in the SEC, they could earn a little bit more respect by beating a USC or beating UCLA. They do have 2 teams like that, and they're out of conference, so that would possibly help them out there. And then Oklahoma, they're high enough up there on the odds that they could see themselves getting 5th place in the SEC. But then 4th place in the Big Ten, your usual, people we've been talking about there: Michigan, Penn State, and then also USC. USC could pop up there as well. You could also maybe put Iowa in here. I just don't think Iowa has the cachet to be an 11 seed team. I think that they'd probably put an SEC team over them, even if Iowa deserved it. I feel like the committee's most likely going to put an SEC team in there rather than an Iowa from the Big Ten. I think it's much more likely you would see a USC or the defending champs Michigan or Penn State get in there for that one. And then the number 3 seed, if Ohio State won that game against the 11 seed, they move on to the 3 seed. You're looking at most likely one of the, really, really big ACC champs: Clemson, Florida State. You have your other high odds in there: Miami, Louisville. Those teams, like I said, not as great as schedules, but it could happen. We'll see. And then if you were going to have a Big 12 team jump up there to the 3rd spot, you're looking at most likely Kansas State or Utah getting up there as well. So we compile all this together, right? Regardless of what rank Ohio State is, regardless of where they're at in the college football playoffs, here are the 6 teams that popped up the most often that it seems like Ohio State would most likely be facing some way, shape, or form in the college football playoffs: Ole Miss, Missouri, Notre Dame, Michigan, Penn State, and Alabama. Alabama kind of coming in as that dark horse a little bit. We saw them a few times, but not as many as the other ones. But it would be one that I think the committee would try to set up if they could. I'll be honest, I like our chances against most of these teams. Obviously, the way things went with Missouri last year, I don't know if I really want to face them again. But then at the same time, I'm like, we probably would have beat Missouri if we had all of our players, and if Devin Brown didn't get hurt as early as he did in that game. The offense was just completely stalled out from there, and it's really, really difficult to ask your defense to do everything in one game. I don't know how Iowa does it every single week, but these would be the 6 teams that kind of popped up the most in my projections and the odds and everything that I found out. So let me know, who would you want to face out of these 6 teams? Do you think we have a good shot of beating all of them? Do any of them concern you? Do any of them you're like, I just don't know about that, JR? I don't think we would stand a very good chance. Just really, really interesting to look at. Obviously, this is way too early. We'll know much more once the season starts, but it is interesting to see, based on the way the odds are and the way everything is shaping out, these would be the most likely teams. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. Please do like and subscribe. We appreciate it. Have a good one.